They are never suspended. They do operate according to a beauty, a logic, and a symmetry that we don't quite yet understand. We're getting to understand them better. Dinesh points it out rather intelligently to you. What does Christianity say? Those laws can be suspended, and in your favor too, if you make the right prayers and propitiations and sacrifices. There can be a virgin can conceive, a dead body can walk again, your leprosy can be cured, the blind can see. Nonsense. It's not moral to lie to children. It's not moral to lie to ignorant, uneducated people and to tell them that if they will only believe nonsense, they can be saved. It's immoral. The totalitarian concept of the afterlife, the idea, the hideous idea, doesn't even occur in the New Testament, doesn't occur even in the violent rape and genocide-filled books of the Jewish Bible. There is no punishment of the dead. When God has destroyed your tribe and had your virgins and your children murdered in front of you and your flocks and herds scattered and so on, and you also fall down to a bronze sword, he's done with you. The earth can close over you, that's it. You tangled with the wrong tribe, the one he favored. Not until gentle Jesus, meek and mild, are you told, if you don't make the right propitiations, you can depart into everlasting fire. One of the most wicked ideas ever preached, and one that's ruined the lives and the peace of mind of many, many children, preached to them by vicious, child-hating old men and women in the name of this ghastly cult, which we're met here to discuss tonight. I don't need 2 minutes to finish with this religion, but thanks. I have a moral challenge on this point. Answer me this if you think that morality comes from the supernatural, and we require celestial dictatorship permission for it. Name me a moral action committed by a believer, or a moral statement, or ethical statement uttered by one, that could not be made or uttered by an unbeliever. I've asked this in a number of venues and forums now. I'm going to keep on asking it. I've not yet had an answer. If I was to ask anyone in this room, however, could they name a wicked action performed or a vile statement made by someone attributable only to their religious faith, there isn't a single person here who'd have to hesitate for a second in discovering what that was and saying it. Why is it incompatible with knowledge and science? It's for this reason. We calculate that the human species, Homo sapiens, has been around now. Carl Sagan thought perhaps 200,000 years. I would say 100,000. Not more, not less. In order to believe the Christian message, you have to believe this. For those 100,000 years, people were born, died, usually, many of them, in childbirth, either the mother or the child. Life expectancy, perhaps 20 years, 25. Died of microorganisms they didn't know existed. Genesis doesn't mention them because the people who write Genesis don't know there are microorganisms. Earthquakes would have been terrifying. Tsunamis, volcanoes, mysterious events. War and famine superimposed on this. You can all fill out this picture for yourselves, I'm sure. That was our life. For tens of thousands of years, on and on it went. Maybe a gradual upward curve of a sort. We seem to have made some progress, very painfully, and with infinite suffering and labor, and with our solidarity still intact. Now here's what you have to believe. You have to believe that heaven watched that for 98,000 years. And after 98,000 years, decided 2,000 years, it may be time to intervene. And the best way of doing that would be to have a filthy human sacrifice in a very remote part of Palestine. And the news of this has still not penetrated to the rest of the world, and I don't think will be believed when it does, and isn't believed by me, and can't be believed by a thinking person. Thank you.
Somewhat like the mosquito in the nudist colony, I'm trying to decide where to begin. I want to begin with, if I may, with stripping away a kind of a pose. Because usually when you debate the atheist, the pose is, I am a man of evidence seeking the data. I'm following the evidence where it leads. Now, what's interesting is that if you listen to Christopher Hitchens, he offered no shred of evidence for anything he said at all. He presumed that God does not exist. He presumed the Christians made it all up. He presumed, let's take one of his seemingly firmer presumptions. Scientific laws are inviolable. I said earlier this was an article of faith, and it is. There is no scientific law at all for which we could say that there are no exceptions to it. Let's take one of the most fundamental principles of science. Light travels in a vacuum at the speed of 186,000 miles a second. How do we know that? We've measured it. 1 time, 2 times, 10 times, 1,000,000 times. The philosopher David Hume says even if you measure it 50 million times, you cannot draw an unrestricted general conclusion from any amount of empirical tests. And why? How do we know that on a distant star 5 million light years away, light travels at that speed? Do we know? We do not know. We guess. We assume. Science is based on those kinds of assumptions. So it is the skeptic David Hume who destroyed this idea that scientific laws admit of no exceptions. And if scientific laws do admit of the possibility of exceptions, miracles are possible. Now, let's look at Christopher's portrait of Christianity, which is the heart of his case. It's not fundamentally about, I think, evidence. It's fundamentally, somewhere I believe Christopher called himself, and not an atheist, an anti-theist. And I think what he meant by this is, it's not that I don't believe, I hate God. I hate Christianity, and I hate its founder, Jesus Christ. Why? Why? Now, if you look at history, not even as a believer, here is Christ, one of the mildest men to set face on the earth, harmed absolutely nobody, introduced radical new principles which, if followed, would make our world immeasurably better. Don't just return an eye for an eye, forgive your enemies, turn the other cheek. As a counsel of personal decency and holiness, the power of forgiveness, these are the radical new ideas introduced by Christ. They are seen by Christopher as wicked ideas, even though they have done so much to make our world what it is. It's sadomasochistic, he says. Well, if you look at it purely from human terms, here's a guy, he was killed brutally, but if you accept the Christian premise that God sent his son, not just to be killed, but to be resurrected. It's the resurrection that's the core of Christianity, not the crucifixion. So it's not a sadomasochistic thing, it is a triumphant thing. And here I want to get to the core of all this. I want to read a quotation, if I may, from Christopher, and it's something he sort of said this evening. He says, "It would be horrible if it were true that we were designed and then created and then continually supervised throughout all our lives, waking and sleeping. It would be like living in celestial North Korea." Here I think we get an insight not only into the motive, of atheism, but also into the nature of God himself. And here's what I mean. The way the atheists portray it, God is meanly flinging the atheist into hell. Wrong. We hear from Christopher Hitchens, he doesn't want God. He's shutting himself out from God. He doesn't want heaven. He sees it as a form of abasement, a form of humiliation, a kind of unending parade with flowers in which he's going to be handing out garlands. He doesn't want it. In short, the gates of hell are locked from the inside. When the Bible says that salvation is a gift of God, many people think it means that God gives you the gift of salvation. No. That's not what it says. It doesn't say salvation is the gift from God. It says salvation is the gift of God. God is the gift. And there's no compulsion. We are free to accept him or to reject him. If we reject him, it is by our own choice, and God reluctantly gives us our wish. There's no sadomasochism in that. There is only free choice, the choice to reject God. Thank you.